Greetings and welcome. My name is Stephanie Evier, and I'm part of the team at Re-Energy Africa. At Re-Energy Africa, our mission is to raise awareness, implement inclusive solutions, and build a community of renewable energy accelerators across the continent. We're committed to Sustainable Development Goal 7, where we provide empowering 1,000 communities with clean energy access across the African continent, where we focus on energy, education, environment, and youth and children. Today's interview is part of our effort to shine a spotlight on thought leaders in Africa's energy and legal space, where we're able to capture strategies and its perspectives of individuals who shed light in law, policy, and investment. Thank you so much for being here today. Let's begin. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with a remarkable leader whose work centers around Africa's energy's future. Our guest, Mr. Ola Alokolaro, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, a practicing lawyer with Advocate Law Practice, one of Nigeria's leading commercial law firms. He recently attended Africa's Energy Week in Cape Town, a major gathering with policymakers, investors, and industry leaders across the African continent. Thank you so much for being here, Mr. Ola. It's a pleasure to have you. Can you please tell us a bit about yourself, where you're from, your background, and what inspired you to pursue a career in law and do the field you're in presently?
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Firstly, my name is Ola Alokolaro, and I'm a lawyer based in Lagos, Nigeria. My legal career was really informed by family decisions. I come from a family of lawyers, and it was really about passing on the baton. But my curiosity was sparked at a very young age, seeing my father, adorn his gown and his wig on his way to court. And of course, naturally, as your role model, you kind of like follow his footsteps. And that's what really got me studying law and eventually practicing it.
And how did your path lead you to Advocate Law Practice, and what has shaped your interest in the energy and infrastructure sectors?
I had the privilege of understudying two lawyers, great mentors in legal practice, and both firms practice energy work. And I really started my career working on corporate and commercial transactions. But as I became more involved in infrastructure projects, I realized how central energy really is to everything. So, I've been privileged to have a platform to focus on that intersection between law, business, and national development. And over the years, I've seen how strategic legal input can make or break a project. And that's what really keeps me excited about the work that we continue to do.
So you've just returned from Africa Energy Week in Cape Town. What were the most compelling and surprising themes that stood out this year compared to the previous years, or compared to what you've been attended to?
Well, I think it's the fact that there is now growing recognition that Africa as a continent, its energy future isn't just a binary choice between fossil fuels and renewables. It's about finding a pragmatic pathway that allows us to use fossil fuel endowment to support industrial growth while scaling up on renewables. And I also found it encouraging to see how there was a lot more emphasis on local participation on financing. And I noted that the African Energy Bank, which is being set up in conjunction with AfriExim, it's going to help to make sure that Africans are not just hosts, but actual stakeholders in this whole energy transition process.
I like what you said, not just fossil fuels, but renewables and actual finance. Now, my next question, as Africa energy policies evolve, how are these regulatory changes impacting deals, projecting financing, impacting the law sector, and the investor confidence?
Well, one thing that investors are always after is predictability, right? They want to see, clear and consistent policies from the government. And, as far as Nigeria is concerned, I think the Petroleum Industry Act that was passed in 2021 was definitely a big step in the right direction for us in terms of providing investors with clarity as to governance structures and new fiscal regimes. But of course, across Africa, there's still an enormous amount of work to do in ensuring that ongoing reforms actually translate into practical and transparent frameworks that investors can rely on.
So now we're going to get into policy and investment confidence. Nigeria has now secured over 8 million in upstream investments under President Tinubu's administration. From your perspective, what specific policy or fiscal reforms have been most instrumental in rebuilding investor confidence in the energy sector?
I think there's a number, right? Like I stated earlier on, the PIA in terms of ensuring clarity around governance and governance institutions, and of course more recently the fiscal regime that is a lot more competitive. I mean, if you heard the news earlier on today and yesterday, Shell announcing over 2 billion in terms of final investment decision with respect to offshore gas production, certainly shows that what the president or the reforms that the president is pushing through is actually delivering.
So, do you believe that many view natural gas as a critical transition fuel, right, towards a cleaner future? How do you see projects like the HI offshore gas field balancing Nigeria's industrial needs with the global push toward renewable energy?
From the information available, it appears that the feedstock from that project will be dedicated to the NLNG, right, which is primarily export oriented. But we're trying to grow our domestic market, and I think with some of the domestic gas utilization quotas that are out there, some of the gas resources will be available to power local industries and boost economic growth.
This $2 billion gas project is expected to supply nearly 1/3 of gas needed for the NLNG Train 7 and expand domestic LPG access. How do these investments translate into tangible benefits for ordinary Nigerians, especially in terms of jobs, clean cooking access, water, and economic growth?
Like I said, with respect to foreign earnings from the NLNG, right, and naturally that would translate into us being able to spend a lot more on critical infrastructure in the health, education sectors, thereby ensuring that we have the right manpower to continue to sustain that sector and other sectors. And then in terms of LPG access, clean cooking, us being able to meet our climate change objectives, so it's a win-win for all across board.
How can Nigeria ensure that the gains from the large-scale gas investment also reach off-grid and underserved communities that still lack access for reliable energy?
In terms of off-grid energy, there are a number of policies in place or being put in place by the federal government to ensure greater access to energy by rural communities. There are a number of mini-grid and off-grid solar projects federal government is pushing, and so that should help in terms of energy access in underserved areas.
We're seeing a renewed interest from investors in Africa's energy space. From your legal perspective, what's the best way for investors to de-risk their entry?
First thing first, you can't do enough due diligence because operating in Africa, if you don't have the right partners, can be difficult, right? So, due diligence is key. It's also important to start early and have the right legal support to help you navigate the various laws and policies that may impact your project. So it's key due diligence. Second, ensuring you have the right advisors to support you in terms of de-risking the project, a proper risk allocation in your contracts.
What kind of policies and infrastructures do you believe can increase the ability of investments towards cleaner energy?
So there's definitely need to, increase, access to power. So reliable power grids or off-grid and renewable energy access is required, right? And, with that, you'll be able to get the right skilled manpower and also develop your economy. So it's important that governments focus on key infrastructure, particularly power, to drive the growth of their economies.
In your view, collaboration was a major theme at AEW. In practical terms, what does collaboration look like between governments, investors, and law firms like yours?
Right. Collaboration really needs to move from being transactional to being strategic, right? We all know that governments need private capital to develop projects, and investors themselves also need stable policies, right? And that's where we come in. We bridge that gap by helping to translate policy intent into bankable transactions, aligning legal frameworks, financing structures, and project goals, right? So that everybody's interest, government, investors, are actually all aligned.
What roles do you see organizations like Re-Energy Africa and other private energy innovators play in complementing these large upstream projects, particularly in renewable integration, energy access, and technology transfer?
So I think there needs to be a lot more awareness around what the incentive regimes are, what grid accesses, whether it's mini grids, microgrids, right? There needs to be greater understanding on that, and what the power purchase frameworks are. Okay, so it's really important that organizations such as Reenergy continues to lead in terms of thought leadership, right, and ensuring that investors are aware of changes in policies that will be able to support renewable projects across Africa.
How do you think that some of these awareness can be spread? What are some of the ways that effective awareness, because I know a lot of times we say awareness, we just got to get the message out, we just got to continue. What do you think is the most effective way to get investors to actually have a tangible change?
It's important to showcase, projects that have scaled, that are making a difference in our communities. I can, off the top of my head, there's a company that is doing great work in terms of renewables in Nigeria and providing energy access, connects. So I think showcasing some of these projects and how they've been able to positively impact the environment, whilst the investor is also able to make a reasonable return on their investment. How they're all playing out is some of the things that can be done in terms of creating awareness.
Where do you see Nigeria's energy landscape heading over the next decade? And what legal reforms or innovations excite you the most?
Nigeria is slowly now beginning to diversify its energy mix, right? We're seeing momentum, as we've talked about in terms of gas utilization. We're seeing, renewed vigor in terms of renewables, and even with respect to regional power trade, right? In terms of legal reforms, I think we need to continue to deepen local content, right? See how we can digitalize licensing and make it easier for investors, right? And, have, transparent procurement processes are things that, I find exciting in terms of upcoming reforms. And if we continue to build on these, then Nigeria can definitely earn that status of being a genuine energy hub for West Africa and beyond.
So I know I asked the question earlier, but like I said, under Nigeria, we've literally secured over $8 billion. That's a lot of money in investments from Tinubu's administration. Do you know how that funds gets allocated with it being invested towards the energy sector? What things are taking place? How can we actually use that money to actually see it span across the Nigerian country?
Some of the inflows we've seen, help increase our crude oil production, right? We're also seeing some in terms of the numerous gas development projects around the country. And like I said, by the time some of these projects crystallize, right, then we would have significant revenue to play with and use to, rehabilitate and create new infrastructure that would be spread all around the country, right, and push the country forward.
So I know you work with Advocate Law Practice. So what kind of work does Advocate do within Nigeria's and Africa's energy sectors that distinguishes your firm from others in the space? Or what work do you specifically do for the energy sector that makes a significant difference?
As a law firm, we've been involved in pretty much everything across the energy value space, from upstream oil and gas projects to renewable energy initiatives, and large scale, infrastructure development such as ports, railways, and water. And what sets us apart is really our deep understanding of both the legal and commercial sides of these deals. We just don't tell our clients what the law says. We try to help them figure out how to make their projects bankable, compliant, and sustainable in the long term.
Apart from your law firm, is there any initiatives that you're also a part of in the energy sector?
I also sit on the board of a captive power company that provides captive power solutions to various industries. So, like I said earlier, there's still a huge infrastructure deficit, right, in the power space, right, and also in the gas space in terms of critical gas pipelines, right, and in terms of power, the unreliable grid, and the constraints there, right? So, some of the initiatives is using my platform to see how the companies that I serve can bridge the gap for now and ensure that energy access is there to propel our economy.
Can you tell me more about what they provide and where is it located and what's the role of this?
They provide electricity, on-site electricity, using gas solutions to provide, as like LPG or CNG, to provide electricity to industries, the likes of breweries and some other manufacturing industries.
Is there anything you would like to share regarding the energy sector and what stood out to you most in Cape Town, your overall role? Where's the energy sector looking, like their trajectory in Nigeria, in Africa? What needs to take place? Something that needs to be honed to get investors and individuals to get captivated to be along this journey.
It's a good thing that the energy transition isn't just a one-way traffic anymore, right? And we're seeing renewed interest in fossil fuel development, not only in Nigeria but across Africa. We're seeing new exploration activities in Namibia and in other places in Southern Africa. So, I mean, this is a huge welcome development, right? Nigeria, on its part, has had maybe 2 or 3 licensing rounds in the past couple of years, right? And again, great interest from the IOCs and the independents alike. So yeah, it's good to see that is moving, because we're going to need that fossil fuel, right, to be able to propel the African continent in terms of industrialization and growth. And with that will come the education of our people, right, and the critical infrastructure that needs to be in place for cross-continental trade.
And what advice would you give to young lawyers or professionals hoping to build a career at the intersection of law, energy, and development in Africa?
I think one thing is that, they must remain curious, right? I mean, things are developing by the day, technology-wise. So not only must they be curious, they must also be, adaptable. right? And as the energy sector is evolving, you know, what you learn today may completely be different tomorrow, right? So they shouldn't just focus on the legal, right? I think it's important to know how the projects you're working on work, right? And not just how the contracts read, okay? And most importantly, they should see the practice of law as a tool for development and not just a profession.
What do you believe is the government's roadmap for integrating renewable energy into the national grid alongside gas expansion?
One of the critical components in terms of gas to power before was to do with pricing, right? That's why there were a lot more export-oriented projects, gas projects, than there were domestic, right? But with some of the reforms introduced by the PIA, right? I think we're about getting the pricing right for gas for strategic sectors such as power, right? So we should begin to see some traction there, right? Though there's still the issue around grid constraints, right? Now, the new Electricity Act also provides for integration of renewables into the Nigerian electricity supply industry, right? So these are welcome developments, right? With the decentralization of the electricity industry, right? We should also see, states using, what they have, basically. So perhaps the northern states, you'll probably see where there's a lot more sun, right? You'll probably see a lot more renewable solar projects going on there, and in the southern states closer to the waters, you'll probably see wind solutions and other solutions, but not to rule out nuclear either, in terms of some of the stories that I've been hearing. Okay, so the opportunity is there for renewables integration into the electricity supply industry.
Transparency is crucial in high value energy projects. How can civil society, including organizations like Re-Energy Africa, play a role in ensuring accountability?
There's an initiative, Nigerian Extractive Transparency Initiative, which typically every year provides a report on almost every aspect of the extractive energy industry, right? So it's initiatives such as that that makes participants within the value chain ensure that there's greater transparency and greater compliance. Some of the laws and policies that have been recently introduced also help in this regard. For instance, the host community development trusts that have been set up ensures that there's greater transparency in terms of the use of the funds set aside for community developments, right? And all of these have to be reported to the regulator. So, how can Re-Energy help is also by working closely with the regulators and some of these civil society organizations to better disseminate information, positive information. There's always positive and negative information, right? But it's important that the positive information is also reported.
As investments pour into Nigeria's gas sector, How can we ensure the local capacity development, both technical and managerial, sustain the growth?
Some of the things in place, like the local content laws, are very good initiatives, okay? But we need to perhaps retweak them, right? Because what we saw is with the introduction of a lot of the OEMs just simply disappeared, right? Not to say that there have not been significant gains with it, right? But if we're a little bit more strategic, right, in how we implement these local content initiatives, right, we could benefit a lot more in terms of technology transfer, etc. So it's very, very important for us to revisit this issue of local content laws and policies and see where we can tweak it and adapt it a little bit better to ensure the sustainability of our energy industry, and that cuts across oil, gas, and power.
How are the international investors assessing Nigeria's risk profile compared to a few years ago? Do you feel like it's a higher risk, a lower risk, particularly in terms of stability and currency management?
The view on Nigeria is positive, right? I mean, the news of the various investments coming in certainly shows that. Our ratings by the international financial institutions also show that, right? We've been able to put laws and policies in place, right, that supports the inflow of investment. We've been consistent in that, right? There's been stability with the government, transitioning from one government to another. So in terms of political stability, that is fine, right? So we have pretty much all the tools in place now to really begin to propel forward along with our international partners.
And how have updates to the PIA improved transparency, contract enforcement, and investor protection in the energy sector?
You know, the PIA is a very good comprehensive legislation, right, that sets out the governance structure in a very, very clear manner, right, as opposed to what was obtainable before. The licensing process is absolutely clear to the extent that there is now even a registry at NUPRC, which is the upstream regulator, right, that clearly spells out not only who the owners of the assets are, or the license owners are, but also the beneficial interest holders in those licenses. So you can't get any more transparent than that. Now, in terms of speedy resolutions of conflict, I know that the same commission has introduced some form of dispute resolution center, right, to ensure that disputes are settled quickly, and investors and others are not bogged down in the court system, which can be slow and grinding. But with these centers, we've seen an improvement in how disputes are quickly settled, and people are able to get on with the real work of working the ground and being productive.
What legal or institutional bottlenecks still hinder large-scale foreign investments, and how can they be addressed moving forward?
There's still issues around for instance, in some getting your contract budgets approved and things of that nature. There's still needs to be significant improvement in those areas, right? If that can happen and we can lower the costs of operations in the oil and gas space, and I'm talking upstream now, right? Then we'll begin to really see the big boom. Not that we're not seeing it; we just saw it with Shell's decision, right? But then we can see a lot more players. We understand that Petrobras has indicated interest of coming back to play in the Nigerian upstream, presumably offshore again, right? I mean, that's wonderful news and shows that we are really, doing all that is necessary to attract, the big guns back in again.
And my last question, what reforms are being implemented to ensure that energy contracts, and the FIDs are not only profitable, but socially responsible?
I believe that there were recent regulations around cost optimization, which was really pushed through from the president's office. Right now, these will certainly ensure that contracts are approved faster and costs are driven down. So, like I said, this administration has really shown great commitment in terms of wanting to change the status quo and move the country forward, move the sector forward in terms of increasing its production quotas, and thereby, bringing in a lot more revenue that is required for the various infrastructure projects that they're committed to doing.
Do you have any final remarks that you would like to share to industrial leaders, investors, community individuals, people that are looking to actually get into the space? What are your final remarks to share, to shed light, and to inspire to get involved with the journey and to say how far we've come as a whole?
What is important is sincerity of purpose, right? From all stakeholders, right? Sincerity of purpose from the government and sincerity of purpose from the investors. There is no quick wins, right? We've got to work together, not in the short term, but in the long term, to really deliver value, right? One, for the government in terms of its promise to its people, and two, for investors, shareholders, granting them the right return for their investment. So it's important that there's sincerity of purpose across board.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ola, for sharing your time, your expertise, and perspectives with us today. Your reflections on evolving legal frameworks, investment challenges, and the roles of law firms like APICAT in the energy transition are deeply valuable. We believe these insights will help our audience, our policymakers, our investors, and young professionals to better understand how to engage responsibly and strategically in Africa's energy future. At Re-Energy Africa, we look forward to continually amplifying such voices and foster connections that support impactful work across the continent. So to our audience, thank you so much for tuning in and being part of this conversation. I'm Stephanie Evier, representing Re-Energy Africa. Until the next time, let's keep pushing forward toward a more equitable, clean, energy-powered Africa.